It's exactly 10 to 4, so I think we'll get cracking. My name is John Cox, University Librarian at NUI Galway. So I got the pleasure of chairing this. I suppose it's the last multi-paper plenary of the day, to put it that way. But we're going to have 20 minutes per presentation with 10 minutes for questions at the end. And Liz Dorr is kindly our rigorous timekeeper, so we'll keep to time as best as we can. And with that in mind, I'm going to call our first speaker, who's Helen Young from Loughborough University, who's going to talk about the postgraduate research students' user experience. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you, John. It's lovely to see you all this afternoon. Thank you for coming along to this session. I'm the Academic Services Manager at Loughborough University Library, and we're basically in charge of the subject librarians because we've still got a slightly more traditional model at the moment. So, I haven't got my pointer. Thank you. Okay, so what I want to do is talk to you about the project that we've been running with Taylor and Francis. Just come on, good work. There we go. And what I want to do is run through basically what the project's about. Then we're going to look at two particular areas because it covers a whole range of different areas of the user experience for postgraduate research students. So I'm going to look at how the PGRs actually get to the information that they need. And then we're going to look at how they develop their skills because that's my own personal particular interest, research development. And then finally, we're going to have some reflections about the project so you can see whether it might be something that would be of interest to you to run out in your own institutions as well. So, looking first of all, I don't know, can you read any of the text at the back? No, that's fine. Don't worry. Basically, what we wanted to know is how libraries and publishers could basically improve the services that they provide and the products they provide to postgraduate research students. So we're looking at how they find information, how they use the information and manage it, and then also how they actually use the library, if they do, and how they use the publishers as well, because obviously working with Taylor and Francis, they were very interested in how it played out from their point of view. How they use their platforms, because they were just about to relaunch their own web platforms. So they wanted to see how they should perhaps redesign things. And we were also interested to find out what they were happy about with the services and also how frustrated they were with the research process to see if there's anything we could do to iron out or smooth out those problems. So who was involved? Well, from the Loughborough side, you've got a whole range of different stakeholders. So we've got the library, we've got the Director of Library Services and an Assistant Director for Academic and User Services, who also kind of like sat in the middle because he's also a journal editor for the new Review of Academic Librarianship. So that was really how the link came about. We'd got myself and we'd also got our research data manager as well, so people from around different parts of the library. We also involve members of the graduate school because we run our workshops in conjunction with the graduate school. We're very closely linked in with them. So the head of research development for the university was involved and two of her staff. And we also had an academic. So we had a PhD supervisor who was also in charge of the PGR programme for the School of Arts, English and Drama. And that brought an interesting different perspective on the research process and also ways we can word things within the survey itself. Marketing Advancement got involved, and most importantly, the postgraduate researchers themselves were the key contribution from Loughborough. From the Taylor and Francis side, we had somebody who was in charge of the social science and humanities journals, and we had their communications team, and they were really helpful for getting the message out there about the project, and also for giving a professional look and feel to any of the marketing that took place. They ran a Twitter party, and they did lots of things that we wouldn't have thought about running. And nice videos, professional-looking videos. And another key part of Taylor and Francis' contribution was their research and analytics team. So in the autumn term, when we were doing teaching and coping with a few staff shortages, they actually analysed the data. So that was absolutely key for us. So what did we do? We ran, firstly, a way to get the PGR community interested was an actual how to get published workshop to tempt the PGRs onto campus and to actually find out a bit more about the project. And after Taylor and Francis had run that, we said, would you like to be involved in a project? And 26 of them completed an initial survey, and with that, we actually then whittled them down to 10 participants based on the quality of the responses to the survey. So we didn't want just anybody who wanted to get involved. We wanted to get good qualitative data from them. So we got 10 involved altogether, and they covered a range of disciplines. They didn't include any humanities or social science students, And they also didn't include any pure science students. That was actually by chance. It wasn't by design. But we did have quite a few sports students involved, because Loughborough is well known for sports. So we had at least 3 people linked in with sport. And we had management, we had civil and building, and I think that's sociology as well. So we did have a social sciencey person involved. And we did quietly give them a financial incentive. We weren't allowed to put that within the publicity, but they were reimbursed for their time by about £400, spread out over the time. But they actually got involved because they wanted to be involved. It wasn't purely for the finance. They did make that clear. What they did was they completed a monthly survey over one each month, and there was a series of questions that ran throughout those 8 months, and then one particular focused question each month, looking at something like open access, or how they would deal with being a journal editor, how they develop their skills, how they manage references, and also what sort of websites they liked, or the arrangement of the websites that they liked. Taylor and Francis also ran a focus group to actually look at web design in more detail, and at the very end, we collated and analysed the data. So that's how we did it. So let's look at some of the data. And one thing we're aware of is because we have got 10 participants, it's not a huge exhaustive survey. So what we don't want to do is say all PGR students behave like this. But what we thought was particularly interesting is see how the different individual students did behave and how they did search, because not all of us in the library have done a PhD. And so we're not always sure exactly how they'll go about doing their searching, and it was just interesting to see how they did it. So what we've got is some process maps, which is actually blurry here, let alone at the back. So each month they were asked how they went about finding information and how they actually got to 3 or 5 websites. And then my colleague Gareth Cole went and analysed the data and drew out exactly the steps that they took to get to the information. And the thing that was right clear was that everybody did it in a slightly different way, and they did it all slightly different each month as well. So it's quite difficult to draw a particular pattern of your typical PhD student. There isn't one. But they all go about it in the most sensible way they think at a time. So in this example, in month 1, they started off in Google Scholar, went to Emerald Insight, downloaded the paper, and then used features within Emerald Insight to actually download more papers. And then they actually read abstracts, downloaded 12, and then they stopped. Don't know why they stopped at 12, but they stopped at 12. The next month, they decided to go and talk to a thesis author on Facebook. And one thing that was quite interesting to us was the fact that when they talked about how they use social media, Twitter was important, but actually Facebook was equally important in how they're actually contacting people and going about getting hold of materials. So they talked to a thesis author on Facebook, arranged a meeting. Then they went to search on Google to find their thesis, to download it from an institutional repository, and from that institutional repository they then went to ResearchGate to actually find more papers. So Google Scholar and ResearchGate were the places that they really went on that occasion. Didn't touch the library at all. On month 3 and 4, they started off in the library catalogue, and that might not seem to be a bit of a shock to a librarian that they should use a library catalogue, but actually to us, when we actually analysed all of the data, the library catalogue was the place they started, or they mentioned most frequently after Google Scholar, which was actually slightly higher than we expected. Because particularly for finding journal articles, we tend to think of our library catalogue as an undergraduate tool rather than a researcher tool, because its search interface is more Google-esque than being able to do any sophisticated searching. And it seems that in month 3, this researcher discovered that themselves, because they tried the advanced search and then actually found their research using the normal search after all. And it would be lovely to know what they actually typed into that advanced search box to find that the normal search was better. They read many titles and abstracts, and then they downloaded one article, saved it to the computer, and then they went off to Ethos and then Google Scholar. And then they stopped searching at that point, so they're going to various different places. And then in month 4, the search catalogue, couldn't find anything on the library catalogue, went to Scholar, and then went to 2 or 3 databases. Then at that point decided they need to change their search. Again, we would love to know exactly what they were searching for, because you do fear that they could have done it a lot more simply. Downloaded 2 articles and stopped. And that's one thing where we learned that actually it would have been much more helpful to have actually teased out more data from them in the mentoring process, because each participant had a mentor assigned to them who they talked to each month about to make sure they were okay filling out the survey, and we had it there as a check to make sure they were keeping filling out the survey. But actually we could have got a lot more data from them using those mentoring meetings. Another student, they also used the library catalogue 2 months running, and this is where they actually started to discover some barriers, and something that we have learnt is that there are a lot of barriers that libraries put in place for the PhD students, or for all students. And at Loughborough we've got Classic Athens, which is possibly even more of a barrier for many people. So in this case, they went to the library, opened the result they wanted, discovered they needed Athens, and I think this was an e-book. They actually then went to another university system to find their Athens password, enter the login details because they found it, clicked through, found the book. That was fine. The next time, they went for a journal article via the same route, and this time they got a bit annoyed because they clicked on the first full text option from the catalogue, and then they didn't actually go straight to the article. They actually went to the contents pages, couldn't remember what they were looking for, so they clicked on the second option, thinking that would take them straight to where they wanted to go. Sadly, that one didn't either. So then they had to return back to the first class, remember what they were looking for, and then actually go through to find it by issue to see which article it was. It would have been so much simpler if they could have just gone straight through. They want it instantly there, where they want it. And this one we found quite interesting because, again, you tend to think books, they'll go to the library to find a book. Nope, that's not the most logical place for them to go. They saw a book on a colleague's desk, which they thought would be useful, great. So they went to Google to search for the book title, found a website linked to the book, browsed the website, still needed to read the book, went to Google Shopping to get an idea of the price, then went to Amazon to find the price, decided actually it was probably too expensive, didn't need to buy it after all. Then they checked the library catalogue, noted it was in the book in the library, and went and got the book from the library. Bless them. And this person again, this person sadly gave up when actually they could have got hold of the item probably. And they actually emailed their colleague who'd used a research method they were interested in, responded, got 5 titles back from the person, very kind person. So they went to Google Scholar to find the articles. Those they could get instantly, they downloaded, went to Mendeley. Some they needed an Athens username and password for, so I'm guessing they were working off campus. Hadn't saved it, kind of good. Logged in to learn to get their Athens password, couldn't find it. It was there, honestly, it's always there. Gave up, tried to find Google for other items by the author, couldn't find them. They could have, if they contacted the library, they'd have got their Athens password. If they contacted the library, they'd have been told to use the VLE, or sorry, the VPN, so they could have gone straight to the article. Or they could actually have got an interlibrary loan. They don't like using interlibrary loans, seems to be the message. So, lots of different routes to information, but there was a lack of awareness or willingness to use, we're not sure which it was, about basic library services. So things that we in the room would think, oh, you must know that you can get a book from the library would be a start. You can get an interlibrary loan, you can ask us questions, we'll buy books for you, we can give you advice on searching. They didn't go to them, didn't go to us for that. And the authentication methods are causing barriers. So skills development, how do they actually develop their skills? Well, looking at the numbers of mentions in the question when we asked them how they went about developing their skills, workshops were the top way. And in our case, you've got workshops, you've got general workshops, ones that they would term typically graduate school workshops or library workshops. And they use those terms interchangeably because of how we organise it at Loughborough, where our library workshops sit within the grad school. They also went to their peers and they went to their supervisors. But what actually surprised us most was how much they developed their skills before PhD. In a way, it shouldn't surprise you because they don't come just, newborn PhD students. But the fact that they reflected on how they'd actually developed their skills made tease that out a little bit more for us. So we've got some quotes because it's easier for them to talk in their own words. And the first one actually explains how the keeping up to date sessions do seem to have benefited the students, and how they actually kept up to date reflected what we teach them on the keeping up to date sessions, where actually alerts were the main way they kept up to date. So a traditional old school way of keeping up to date they kept with. So this person, in case you can't read it at the back. So also some of the training workshops offered by the graduate school has helped me get to know what is available. For example, keeping up to date in my research area, that's actually a library course, by having alerts based on specific keywords and what services the university has for us postgraduate students. Overall, I've developed these skills over my education. However, all of these information keeps changing so much because of the way technology is advancing. So one has to continually be learning what is new to add on to skills they already have. And PhD students have time devoted for their CPD. They have to do a certain number of hours CPD every year. That's how they feel. They know they need to keep keeping up to date. How do we keep the supervisors as up to date as the PhD students? That is the challenge that I think we've got in turn, because they don't have that time carved out particularly for them. This person feels that they don't keep up to date as well as they'd like to, so managing information, finding information, and they find it difficult to measure whether you actually are keeping up to date in comparison to whether you feel that you're keeping up to date. And when we asked them the question, are you confident that you're keeping up to date in your field, none of them were. They were all doing lots of different strategies to keep up to date, but none of them actually felt that they were doing that sufficiently well, which is quite sad, really. I've been on the grad school keeping up to date, providing with a couple of new skills. Oh, good. From being on this course and speaking to other postgraduates about their means of finding out about new resources, I've set up a number of alerts on places such as Google Scholar, ZTalk, Web of Science, to name a few. So again, the workshop helped, and it helped them meet other people, which is actually one of our learning outcomes for our courses, is to actually network with other people and learn from each other. And it's nice to see that that actually has been working. And this one is actually looking at how their changing needs have happened as they've been a student. So when they started off as an undergraduate student, they used RefWorks, and that's what they were told to use at one institution. Then they came to Loughborough and did their masters, and they moved to Mendeley. We're quite glad they did that because we've just taken out an institutional subscription to Mendeley. So we're glad they went that way rather than the other way. And actually, when they go on and talk about their PhD, so they found Mendeley has been helpful when they were doing the postgraduate talk course. When they came on to do their PhD, that they are now having to deal with so many sources and references at once that they can understand the need for managing their references. So they've had to adapt as they've been going along through their experience. And they've actually found Mendeley to be far easier to use than RefWorks. Thank goodness for that, we all thought at that point. So this is a couple of students both picking up on how their supervisors have pointed them in the hopefully right direction of websites and databases, and also how much they really notice what their supervisors are doing, so how they're organising their books and their papers and materials to save time, hopefully, and how they organise their agenda, how they select their key authors to support their arguments, how they collect the data, how they share information, and how they work to collaborate with other authors. So they are learning from the skills of their supervisors in so many different areas, or that particular individual was. So again, it's so important that the supervisors are modelling that best practice. And it did help give us a bit of impetus to restarting our library, our staff training sessions within the library called library briefings, to try and tempt their supervisors in to keep updating their skills. So from our reflections, face-to-face workshops do have a role. They have been learning, they have been effective. Nearly all that were referred to by all the students were the generic sessions. They weren't discipline specific. They do develop their skills before they get to their PhD, and the supervisors need to be aware of and ideally model best practice. So a few reflections. What worked well for us? So PhD participation was great. We were really worried they'd drop out. But they didn't, none of them. They all went right to the end. They stuck by the project. The fact that we had a variety of partners involved did also, we did use the best practice from different parts within each institution. And the mentoring worked very well for smoothing out little problems with the questionnaire, and also for keeping the participants involved and engaged with the project. We do think that worked very well. We enjoyed it as well from the library staff point of view. We were flexible. Having the research team was really helpful, particularly for dealing with the peaks and troughs of an academic year when you're doing practitioner research, and the marketing team at TNF was excellent. What we do differently, there's always things you could have done better. So we would have followed up on the questionnaire data a lot more to try and understand the behaviours. We would have liaised more about the data analysis. And when I was sitting at an RLL UK conference a few months ago, I was listening to how OCLC were doing some of their research projects and talking about the coding of the data and checking back with each other. We should have done more of that because different terminology between different institutions, particularly publisher and education, it would have helped a lot and saved a bit of reanalysis later on. And we would have been more optimistic about recruitment and, of course, would have set aside more time. So key messages for Loughborough: generic sessions do have value. We need to manage researcher expectations, but also we perhaps need to smooth out some of our processes along the way as well to try and help them get the information that they need. Services and support need to be visible at point of need. No point, we might tell them you've got interlibrary loans at the very beginning of their course, but they'll have forgotten 2 or 3 years down the line. So, they need to know when they're trying to find that paper that they have got access to information other ways. Embed good research practices at an earlier level, and we're perhaps thinking about doing more research data management at an earlier level, and we'll also facilitate and develop more peer-to-peer learning. That's what Taylor and Francis learnt. I'm going to slightly skip over that because of time, but there's a little bit in there: help librarians understand open access. We'd love to know what Taylor and Francis meant by that, actually, because we think we understand open access pretty well, but possibly not in the same context that the publishers do. So what next? Well, we will be feeding this into our teaching this year, perhaps looking at some of those networking diagrams and see if these PhD students could learn from each other. We'll also try and continue our link with Taylor and Francis. We have had some staff changes, so we'll have to create some time to actually continue that linking between us. And also, if you are interested in doing any research in a similar way yourselves, Taylor and Francis are developing a toolkit based on our experiences and other experiences in research for practitioner research. So please do keep a lookout for that. If you've got any questions, contacts there, and of course at the end as well. Thank you very much. Thank you.